Spoiler alert. You're listening to the ComicsOnline Podcast. Season 20. Episode 6. Kasey Pierce. Broadcast live from FXBG Public Radio December 9th, 2019. This episode, Kevin and Troy David are joined by Kasey Pierce, author of comics Norah and Seeress, and the novel Pieces of Madness.
Converting earthly language into thrust. As you knew before Izawa, Legend of Zelda's turned to dust. Podcasting from the future like your time was dead and gone. And we rock the best site like ComicsOnline.com. Level 12 cybernetics, vibranium power acts. You communicate with snail mail while we wireless adapt. We are more than ECIs, we just tend to blow your spot. You're a copy of better tech like your name was GoBots. You hoping for iTunes, but little noob, you in the danger zone. We're all the best leaders like Serpentor on his throne. Written by Stan the Man, don't you ever try to serve thee. Nougat of this book like we were drawn by Jack Kirby. Hunger like Sinistar, consumer culture then Galactus. Final Fantasy domination with our super geeky tactics. From the days of Marconi to bumping loud in Bespin City. You can hear us on every radio, stolen in Vice City. From leaping tall buildings to going off like gamma bombs. Switch your internet browser to ComicsOnline.com.
Hello again, and welcome to the Comics Online Podcast, Season 20, Episode 6. I'm your host, Kevin Goswan, and with me today, as usual, is my co-host, Troy David Phillips, who you probably already know as the store manager from Flashback Comics in Woodbridge, Virginia. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. We have Kasey Pierce.
Hello.
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 Via the magic of the internet. And Kasey, you, as our robot has described, you've got a couple of comics. You got one out and one coming out.
Yes.
So and then you recently released a novel as well. And you've got a podcast that you do. Is it yours or do you do it with are you a guest on other people's?
I do a podcast with my cousin on Podcast Detroit called The Watch List.
Okay.
And it's about conspiracies and the paranormal. Sometimes we talk a little bit about comics because my cousin has cosplayed. She's in the Comic-Con. She's a little bit into that scene. But we touch on that very briefly. Other than that, it has nothing to do with comics.
Fair enough. So you met with Troy at what was it? Baltimore Comic-Con.
Baltimore Comic-Con.
Yeah. Oh, and he's got his shirt on.
Yeah. So this delightful young woman was in a panel with Stan Sakai and Walt Simonson and Paul Story, and they were talking about mythology, which is, favorite subject of mine in comics. And I'm like, oh, well, of course, it's Walt Simonson and Stan Sakai, so of course I'm going to go to this. I don't know anything about Paul's story, and I don't know anything about Kasey Pierce. Well, and then they spoke, and I was like, I have to get to know these people. So,
Paul's a great cat. He just recently joined our company, and I've known Paul for a number of years.
Well, I also am going to try to get through to Paul to have him on the show like we're doing right now. So hopefully this will work out, and then you can give him a glowing review, because I don't want you to go, oh, my God, Paul, those guys are such jackasses. Don't give them your time of day.
Oh,
People tend to like us after they get to know us a little bit. I mean, we might start out a little weird.
But then this...
I'm already having a blast, so...
Oh, good.
Then this delightful young woman put up with me Sunday as I came up to her booth, and I'm like, just overflowing. I'm like, I feel like I was going, 110 miles an hour.
Troy's a gusher.
And I'm like, ooh, ramp it back, Troy David, ramp it back. Act like you got some sense.
No, I was super excited because you were excited, and I'm like, oh, let's go meet Paul Story. So I took you over to his booth.
Yeah.
I like the con itself. Baltimore is kind of hit and miss. It gets a little slow, and that was at one of our slow points. I'm like, yes, someone bring me back to life.
I've enjoyed it. I think it's what I'm from San Diego and have been going to San Diego Comic-Con all my life, and that's what I was used to in my youth, in my teen years. It was very similar to the way Baltimore is today.
And Baltimore is very comic focused, and it's one of the reasons that I like the convention is, the focus is on the writers and the artists, the creators.
Oh yeah, we have the Ringo Awards too.
Yes, most definitely. I did not go this year. I went the inaugural year, and I decided that I was going to pass this year, but I'm going to start going on a regular basis. I had previously gone to the Harvey Awards show, but that, of course, has moved to New York. So, all right, good on you. So I guess I kind of want to, backtrack a little bit here and
You want to start at the beginning?
well, let's focus on you. So, in the beginning, you were a little flesh blob and you didn't really talk very much. You just sort of sat there while your parents posed for pictures with you. But then eventually you could walk and talk, and you got out of high school. I'm assuming you went to college and got a whole bunch of degrees and stuff. And yeah. So tell us your story.
Oh man, we're going back that far?
As far as you're comfortable going back.
Okay, I would say when I was a toddler to when I was probably 8? No, not that long. Maybe. I wore magic shoes. I was born severely bow-legged. I looked like Yosemite Sam.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So I was that chick in the clunky, metal bars going down the legs to the saddle shoes with the belts. And then Forrest Gump came out, and I'm like, that's not funny.
Oh, no. How old were you when Forrest Gump came out?
Oh, gosh, what was that? 94. So I was, I was 9.
All right.
Wow.
So, yeah, but they weren't that clunky. They were not that primitive, trust me. They were a little more modern, and kids didn't really notice that much. But anyway, so I think I'll take you to this point. Writing was something that I had shelved for a long time because I listened to people who had my best interests at heart, who said that it was impractical, so I never pursued it. And I went to school for a lot of different things other than writing. I went to school, I have a business management degree, because they're like, oh, go for business, then you can do what you want. Okay, so I did that, and then I wound up not doing anything with it, and then I got state licenses, and I became licensed as an esthetician because I wanted to work at a salon with my sister-in-law, and then eventually became a massage therapist, and I've been a massage therapist for the past 8 years. But it was a weird turning point in my life, and I tell this story quite often. I had just come out of a very toxic relationship, and it left me in a weird mental place to where I had woken up one morning on my pull-out couch, surrounded in fast food bags. I smoked at the time, with an ashtray overflowing, and the television screen on my tube TV saying that I needed to pay the bill, and they shut off my cable. And that's when I looked around and I said, something isn't working. Everything I pursued, all my relationships, something is not working. And when I went back and sort of shifted the paradigm, I said, what's not working is that I'm sitting here living my life for other people in the way that they think I should live it, and it's not working out. So I might as well just do whatever the hell I want to do. And so I woke up that morning, I ripped up my cigarettes, and I took my life back, and that's when I started to become a Comic-Con personality. I was a blogger called Cosmic Kasey, and that's where I started.
Okay. And so what did Cosmic Kasey do?
So Cosmic Kasey had big hair. She wore fishnets and sneakers, and she interviewed indie artists and writers. And that was my passion. And those were all my friends too. So I became friends with a lot of people. And I wrote snarky commentary about the con scene, real funny stuff. And I just sort of became this character. And Cosmic Kasey, wasn't wasn't mentally abused or anything. Cosmic Kasey, nothing could scare her. You know, she was fearless. And so I sort of embodied that. And after a while, I became that person. It really helped me through those times. And then Pieces of Madness is actually a really old book. This is actually a re-release.
Oh, okay.
And Pieces of Madness was just 5 short stories of the insane paranormal at the time, with no pictures and really shitty edits, because things got lost in translation. It was a really primitive time for me. I've used that word twice already, but we're gonna say that in early beginnings. Anyway, but it was Tony Maiello with Rocket Ink Studios who had approached me about it, and he said, "I think you can write horror," because he was a fan of a fiction that I was blogging a chapter a month of called The Prophecy Effect, which eventually became Norah. And I said, "No, I don't really do fiction. It's not what I do. You know, I'm a commentator person." And he's like, "No, pitch me something. Pitch me just like a 3-page story." And that became Dollface. And Dollface made it into Pieces of Madness. And we fast forward, I'm selling out of this book at Comic-Cons like crazy. And because, for one thing, I made friends with a lot of people, and number 2, the way I was marketing it was very strange at the time. It was back when Instagram only allowed you 30-second video. So I was doing black and white snippets, embodying each character in each story, and you would get like a flash of static in between each line. And people had no idea, what this was for. But then that's when they started questions. They were like, "Well, what is this? This is super weird." And then they found out it was the book, and that generated a lot of speed, or a lot of traction. And as I'm selling out of this, that's when Travis McIntyre, who just took over for SourcePoint Press, came up to my table and said, "I need you to pitch me a comic." I go, "I don't write comics. I'll never write a comic. That's just not what I do. I don't think panel by panel. I've never even seen a comic script." And he said, well, pitch me something, 22 pages. So at the time, I had the honor and privilege of knowing the late, great Gary Reed of Caliber, who wrote Dead World. And he was a big mentor of mine. And I had a chance to peek at a Dead World script. And I'm like, okay, so this is kind of like a movie, right? So that's why Norah 1 is such a slow burn, because to me, it was the first 10 minutes of a film. Now going back, I could be like, gosh, I would have done things so much differently. And now I know so much more about pacing. But in a sense, it did set the tone for Norah, because it is slow, it's immersive. If you like a slow burn, like, Blade Runner or X-Files, if you like it dark and slow, your sci-fi, then you will dig Norah.
All right.
I did very much dig it. And so, like I said, I've gotten through the first volume. I'm holding up my copy here, and as Kevin cannot steal my copy because it was
says your name right on the cover.
Autographed to me by Miss Kasey Pierce. And that makes my copy a little bit more special than all the rest of you.
Yes, it does, because you got 2 names, too.
There you go.
Well, that's what happens when your parents are indecisive, and you're Southern. Then they hyphenate.
There you go.
I like it.
And so
Do you have a middle name, then?
No, just Troy David and Phillips.
Okay, gotcha.
So I answer to all sorts of things. Believe me, I have to answer to all sorts of things. So
You answer to Lou Diamond?
No. His lawyers have been very clear and direct with me about that.
It kind of has the same syllables.
a lot of times it's "God damn it, Troy." I think Troy is his middle name, and "God damn it" is his first name.
So, I was fact checking on you a little bit. I hope that doesn't make me sound like a creepy stalker, but you were described in one article as the goodwill ambassador of SourcePoint.
Ah.
Those words were applied directly to your name.
Oh, that's cool.
So, as the goodwill ambassador, now I wish I'm like, oh, you know what? If I can find that article, I'll send you the link so you can read it, because apparently you haven't read this article about yourself.
No, but I know our art director Josh Werner has called me the brand ambassador, because everywhere I go, I get the Source Point flag because they're so good to me. Why wouldn't I? And to me, I learn every book that's on the table, because if we make it, I make it, and we have that together we rise mentality.
Sure. So Source Point really seems.
We appreciate that, by the way, at Comics Online. That's the way. That's the way we approach things as well.
Good, very good.
Source Point seems to do a lot of horror. So I'm like, is that like, the company, that's the direction, that's, a lot of.
Yeah, that was their hard scope starting with sci-fi and horror. I was one of the few sci-fi titles, and now we've ventured into fantasy, comedy. We're most known for horror, but we're not trying to go full throttle, we do everything, because I feel like once you have a harder scope, you can target your audience better, and therefore you sell better.
Sure. I think it's good when a company has kind of an internal compass that, it's like, we do this thing and we do this thing very, very well. Valiant Comics does what they do very well. Aftershock Comics does what they do very well. And then there are companies that are kind of all over the place, like Dark Horse. But Dark Horse has been around since 1986, and so they're very clearly very good at doing what they do all over the place.
Right. Well, when you build your brand that big, you get to a certain point where you're just like, well, we can publish anything and people are buying the name. And there's nothing against Dark Horse. I love Dark Horse. I'm a big Conan fan. But that's what happens. The bigger the brand, the more you can get away with.
As now that you're a comic creator, now that you have moved, into this area, what's a day in the life like for a professional comic creator? Like, you wake up in the morning and do what?
I work out and meditate. I believe that very successful people do not just hit the ground running. They start their day the same way. They get centered, and then they check the emails, and then they say, okay, well, what's on the agenda for today? And right now I'm actually working on a comic based on an RPG from Deepwater Games. I had a hand in editing the game. So now there's going to be a comic series, which I'm excited about. But I try to tackle one thing at a time. I am one of those people who I suffer from perfectionism, which gives me crippling anxiety, and therefore I do not get anything done when that happens. So for instance, today I was working on revising or revamping the panel I normally give on the mindset of the comic creator, which is called Good Luck With That. And I'm very excited to take that on tour for 2020. And that was the task of the day. And then tomorrow it's going to be doing the outline for issue 2 of the Sovereign Skies comic book, which is the board game. And I have a giant calendar over here to write on. And it lists, all of my tasks. Everything is right down to the letter with my tasks, from cleaning the house to revising a panel to tomorrow you're going to do the outline for this, and then once that's done, that's it.
So, what if you have this perfectionist mentality, but unlike a Kasey Pierce, for example, you don't have a really good handle on organization, asking for a friend.
That's what I'm talking about. It's having that handle on organization, and that's something that I suffer from, is not having a handle on it. So that's why I can't do the digital thing. Everything has to be written out in front of me, because it's just like they say, if you take good notes, you never have to study. It's kind of like that. You're already in a rhythm. You're like, I remember what I wrote down. This is how my day is supposed to go. And if something else happens, I'll worry about that. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But things come up where I realize that, oh crap, the first Wednesday of the month is tomorrow, and I don't know any of the previews books that are being solicited this month, because I do the Source Point Press Minute and I advertise other people. And then I'm like, oh crap, I gotta throw this video together. But I think that it is important to just write things down and have it in front of you, posted to the wall, like with my calendar over here. And then you'll already have a tone, a rhythm set for the day. Write it down.
I like that plan.
So, just curious, I only have your signature here to base off of. Do you have super neat handwriting?
Cursive, yes. Printing, no. My cursive is very eloquent, so it's like, Kasey Pierce. And when I print it, it's like, dun, dun, dun. Like caveman scrawlings.
So Eric using the Comic Sans is ideal then.
So I wanna just ask just a couple of Norah questions, because I've read this again very recently, and I was trying to. When I'm reading a stack of comics, I collect a lot of titles. I may have mentioned, that I'm taking home roughly 35 comics a week. That's my personal collection.
Sure.
So, I'm reading, it's like, oh, here's the latest thing from Marvel and the latest thing from DC. And I'm all into DC's Year of the Villain and now Marvel's Annihilation. And then this one book from, like Manifest Destiny from Image. There's a lot of my independents that aren't mega arcs and shared worlds. So whenever I'm reading an Image comic like Saga, I have to remember Saga. I have to remember Manifest Destiny. I have to remember each one of these books because there is no other book to support it. Whereas like reading Fantastic Four and Nova and Silver Surfer, these books all support each other. And the Avengers and Black Panther and Captain America, these books all support each other. There's nothing for Manifest Destiny, but incidentally, if you're not reading Manifest Destiny, that book is fantastic.
It
you
is
would
good.
love it. So Norah,
Wait, Troy. Did Saga end, or is it on?
it's
hiatus?
still in its hiatus.
Okay.
There'll be a break and then another 54 issues. So I'm like you were saying, Norah is, it starts as a slow burn and then it really kind of picks up its pace. And for me, it was like 3 stories in one, and they were all, and I liked it all. I was really all over the place. It was like, wow, I can't find my footing. I'm very unsure.
You were all over the place and lost your footing. So did I.
So
It's clear.
I mean it's a heck of a thing. And you know what? Your artist, Mr. Seal.
Yeah.
How did that collaboration come to be? Like, was he just available, or had you two known each other for a while and you said, "Hey, I'm trying something out. Help me"?
Yeah, he was doing a little bit of work for Source Point, and I was stalking him for a little while because I couldn't figure out how his work looked so much different than everyone else's. I didn't understand the medium. And so one day I messaged him and I'm like, "Are you just using really dark colored pencils?" Or he's like, "I'm painting it." And I thought, what a weird concept to paint a comic. But this is a weird story. So I think we could work together. And we did. And he, at the same time, was working on David Hayes's The Rot. And those actually exist in the same universe. And we are building to a crossover.
Oh.
And, yeah. So, and the thing about Sean, he has announced that he's not going to be doing comics anymore. And we are switching artists on Norah to Kelly O'Hara, who also does the painterly style, but her roots are in manga. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I'm liking the that painted style.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it adds some drama too. I think it makes it a little more cinematic.
Yeah.
It's a little funny, because you were saying, it was different, and I'm like, I'm significantly older than you are, so for me, books by artist John J. Muth, like Moonshadow, Greenberg the Vampire, the work of Bill Sienkiewicz in Elektra Assassin. I'm like, painting in comics is not new, but I've also been reading comics, from the Bronze Age, the Copper Age, into
Right.
now. So, I think as a comic reader, I was reading comics when painting was new, but that was in the 1980s.
Yeah, and in the 1980s, the market was really into things that were heavily inked and gritty. And that's actually something I miss about comics from the 90s. It had a lot more grit and roughness to them. For instance, we look at early Punisher was very much like that. But yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, different ways of doing it, especially in the digital age now. But at the time, I had never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
So
and I think you're having a fresh. The writer is lazy or the writer has become a hack. It's just that there are only a certain number of things that you can do that are sustainable. Well, you're in a different place with a different kind of story. So now me as a reader, I'm reading and it doesn't feel formulaic. It feels frightening and disorienting, which I think is the point.
Oh yeah, very good. I'm so glad that it resonated with you like that, because that was my intention. But yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that comes with, and over the years, I've succumbed to a little bit of that too, because once you are immersed into your own work, when you're in the thick of it, that's all you can see, and so you'll start to write things, and so long as you catch yourself pandering, you can correct those things, because I will sit down and write and go, nope, you're thinking too much about the audience, you're thinking too much about your followers, and when you do that, you wind up involuntarily giving them something, like you're like spoon feeding them, and sort of insulting their intelligence, but not meaning to, but that's the way it comes across. They know when you're just trying to make a quick sale. And I try to catch myself with that, but yeah, I can understand where the formulaic thing comes in and how easy it is to slip into that. Absolutely. Also, you could be getting, pressure from the big cats. If you are with, DC Image, they might be asking for these certain things too. I'm not sure. I've not been in that position, but it's not too far-fetched to believe that, they could be like, well, no, it's got to be more like this, because that's what your followers like. It's just the same way in film. We are in the reboot age, and Hollywood is treating the audience like they're stupid, because they are counting on them to not take a gamble. For instance, Ghostbusters. Oh, I know Ghostbusters, I'll go see that. It's a quick action.
Well, sure. I was listening to you and I was remembering you again. I'm old, I'm 53. So when I worked in a comic store in Arlington, Virginia, and in the 1980s, at that time, Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was new. Stan Sakai's Usagi Yojimbo was comparatively new. Cerebus hadn't really been running for that long at that time. So, but you could easily see an artist like Ron Lim start with a very small, fly-by-night company, and then one day Ron Lim is doing Captain America and Silver Surfer. Dale Keown, started with Aircell Comics doing a book called Dragon Ring that, hardly anybody was reading. But then Dale Keown is one day doing the Incredible Hulk for Marvel. So, and it wasn't just the artists, although it was easy for an artist. Michael Golden, actually, he explained it to me, and he said, if you're an artist and you're Jim Lee or Todd McFarlane or somebody like that, you show your work to an editor, you open up your portfolio, and wham. Well, if you're Todd McFarlane, your art is so good, it's done. You're Jim Lee, your art is so good, it's done. Well, if you're a writer and you've written the magnum opus to end all magnum opuses, it has to be the Dark Phoenix saga in one paragraph, because that's all the editor can read.
Right.
Which is why the artist gets in so easily, and it's harder for writers to come in. But here you are, you're in the business already. So do you see yourself making that, those steps into bigger publishers, it's like, I've got my eyes set on this thing. I want to tackle this character and redo it from the top bottom. Once upon Gail Simone was a blogger. Kelly Sue DeConnick wasn't always, rock star Kelly Sue DeConnick. You could easily be these things too.
Well, Gail Simone was something of an esthetician herself. She cut hair for a living.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, I mean, we're all working class Joes. And you're right about, being a writer. It is different because when I go to San Diego with my portfolio, it's a whole different bag. And a lot of times, they can't just sit there and read a whole book.
Right.
It's not with an artist. You can, you know what you're looking at. It is a whole different bag, and a lot of these bigger companies, I hate to say it, look at a writer like a hole in the head. But because they have their roster of writers, and I can dig that. But at the same time, I do have high hopes, and I know that I will be writing a licensed product one day. I only accept that reality, and I just keep plugging away. And someone from Bleeding Cool asked me one time, "Now, would you ever work for one of the big two if they asked you to?" I'm like, "No, I hate money." It's like, of course, because and I have pitched to other companies, and I've been very open about that, because it only helps the brand to have an association. For instance, Jay Fosgate, he does work for Marvel. He did the Rocket and Groot comic. He does work for us, and now he's working for Disney, and that only helps our brand because it's like, hey. Oh, Marvel and Disney's own Jay Fosgate. We have a comic by him. So it all comes 360, and I think it just helps everybody.
Do you have any specifics that you would what are your dream books that you'd like to take over for a year, for example?
I wanted to take over the Army of Darkness license, and that's of course that's a Dynamite title.
Dynamite, yeah.
And then Conan would be pretty nice. It's of course Dark Horse.
What's Marvel
Actually,
these days?
it's Marvel these days.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. It's been a while. But yeah, titles like that.
I'm assuming that you haven't had a chance to see it. So if you get a chance, get to your LCS, I encourage you, visit your local comic shop. Pick up a copy of Conan Serpent War. It uses the Serpent War uses the Robert Howard character, so it's Conan and Solomon Kane, and a Robert Howard character called Dark Agnes. I didn't know much about her, but she seems very much the stable, hard driving, heroine character, and not in a chainmail bikini. No. This woman,
right.
It's a fully realized character here.
So Dark Agnes is the one where
she's the redheaded one on the cover that we couldn't identify her. I looked up to see who the Robert E. Howard characters were, and it was like, oh, this is a Howard character called Dark Agnes.
And she's the nun who gets pregnant, and unlike Agnes of God, she's the one who births the Antichrist. That's the one, right?
No. And Moon Knight also is in the book. If you like that, hey, you should write this. Moon Knight is like all kinds of psychological, his head is broken. There's a strong female protagonist character, Conan that you like, and Solomon Kane, who is an interesting, underutilized Robert E. Howard character. This would be great. As soon as the series is done.
I'm going to go pick this up tomorrow then. I usually go to Comics and More in Madison Heights on John R. in Michigan.
Okay. I had talked about, or had asked you about Norah. I'm going to ask you about Seeress, because that honestly, that's what brings me to the dance here with you, is this Viking witch story. Wow. I when I messaged you that evening, like I said, I'm going to sit down and read this right now. I literally was not joking. I sat down, my cat sat in my lap, I started reading that comic. I read it 2 times, one right after. I was like, wow.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'm really glad.
What with the freaking flies? Oh my God, what was that?
Oh my God. That comes from my grandma. I'm going to tell you about that. My grandma was fire and brimstone Pentecostal. So I grew up around people who spoke in tongues, faith healers, all that stuff. A lot of paranormal aspects going on. And she would tell me that carnal sins of the flesh smell like rotting meat.
Wow.
And so I had imagined flies, and that's where that line comes from.
Maybe bathe, Grandma. I'm just saying.
Right.
Wow. So, it's the same day that Kevin and I had the opportunity to interview Cullen Bunn, who is doing Knights Temporal for Aftershock. Mm-hmm. But Cullen Bunn writes so many books. He's a favorite of Kevin's and mine both. And, he does a lot of horror stories. I asked him, I said, where does that come from? You write these amazing horror stories. They're unsettling and chilling. Where does that come from? And he looked at me without even pausing for a second. And he said, well, I'm a really effed up person and I have a lot of issues.
Oh,
and
that's how we channel it.
So, I mean, is this like, cathartic therapy for you? Or are you actually a perfectly normal, rational, level-headed person with no trauma in your background and you just make stuff up?
Well, she's already admitted to the former.
Right.
Right. I think with Pieces of Madness, that's when I was sort of revisiting the skeletons in the closet as a word. That has a descent into hell theme as well. And a lot of that did come from my growing up in a Bible-centric home. And it does change the things that you're afraid of. Most kids were afraid of, Freddy Krueger, and I was scared of demon possession and leaving myself spiritually vulnerable. And I think you write what you know. And again, that's another tool to avoid pandering, is just to write what you know.
Yeah, that's like, you know what? You're making me need to sit down and read more of this. So
this is 4 short stories. Is that what this is?
This is actually now 7. So Source Point, because it did have this subterranean following, took on the book and did a re-release, and we have illustrations from the latest and greatest in comics and fine arts. We did an illustration for each piece, and then 2 bonus stories. One, Karamia, which is a 60s whodunit, and then Sins of the Father 2. That is the continuation of, because somebody asked me what happened to one of the characters after the story had ended, and I set out to answer that for them. And so it got to shine. It actually has a hardware edition. We only printed 500. It comes with a slipcase. They're all numbered. It's super sharp, and it went over super well. And but yeah, I mean, don't feel bad about reading it slow. It's short stories. Savor the flavor.
Well, I just I feel like I'm holding something special, and I need to read it. Well,
good. It's calling to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so when I
My
get
book
to
is haunted.
Is this like Cthulhu? Like, I'm going to finish it and it will drive me mad? Is that where we're going here?
Now, there is a Lovecraftian piece in there called Bestia, which I believe is the 2nd story.
Going insane early.
And it that centers around my fear of crazy people in groups. It is a very cultist piece.
Wow.
Kind of a Stepford Wives kind of feel. Goes you rough, Stepford Wives.
Well, I could just tell you, never be intimidated by me. My need for acceptance is too high, so I'm very easily shut down.
That one, yep.
Creepy. So now you've got these great illustrations. Has anybody come to you and said, "Hey, I would really love to make a full comic book out of one of these short stories"?
Yeah, it's been talked about. We talked about that with His Majesty, which became the fan favorite. And that was an interesting one. We've even talked film with that one because it was it was a horrific, macabre piece more than it was a horror. It centers around the desperation, the lengths that you will go to keep anyone here in any way, shape, or form, the denial of death. So what this woman does to keep her husband is pretty heinous, but at the same time, you feel for her, and it's very tragic. And she sort of goes insane. But the catalyst for that was actually, not to be on a downer note, was that my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer for a second time. And my sister-in-law had asked me how she was doing, and I just broke down and said, she can't just leave me here. And I thought, what a selfish thing to say. But at the time, I meant it. So I revisited that feeling that I was feeling, and I channeled it into the main character who you actually see on the front of the book.
All right.
Yeah, that's, your level of talent, and I've read very little, but like, your level of talent is staggering.
So I want to get back to this Seeress thing. This sounds awesome. I do love a good short story. But Seeress is something that's is it an ongoing crowdfunded thing? How's that work?
So Seeress, we did have a Kickstarter for the first issue, just to create awareness and to get our artists paid. Very meek goal. But Seeress, they're all one-shots. And I set out to make it a little more marketable because, as you said before, that it's hard to follow a story arc. And the one-and-dones, there's no commitment. However, you could because there are reoccurring characters. And Seeress is Norse mythology meets the craft in the style of heavy metal. There's sexy, gory Viking witch fables. They're a lot of fun. And that's what I set out to do, is to have fun. It's about Icelandic witches kicking ass on the southern shores of Iceland. There's magic, there's sword and sorcery, mythology, and I wanted to harken back to a time where strong women were spray painted on the side of hands, like it was said to be strong, and the times of high fantasy. And J.J. Cott, when I first approached him, I said, "Are you familiar with heavy metal?" And he said, "Well, heavy metal was why I wanted to become an artist." And I said, "Okay, I've got the right guy." And he is, by the way, he's an absolute gem. He is so thorough, one of the most professional artists I've ever worked with. He's his own art director, for real, and love him to death. He's definitely a workhorse. He's definitely passionate. He's in it to win it, and. But yeah, so the first one, Seeress, Reckless, the story of that centers around what it means to cheat in a polyamorous relationship, which is a very tongue-in-cheek concept, but you can chew on that for a little while. And there are a lot of flies in it, a lot of flesh-eating flies, as you had mentioned. And it was a lot of fun to write. This next one is Embla of the Dead, which is about a Mortwitha. And Mortwithas worship their dead kin. And that's what this girl Embla does. And then she finds that her parents who have passed on, have actually become enslaved by a demon. She literally has to go through hell to get them back.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I'm okay. I'm in.
These sound like fun stories.
Yeah. Here,
rock and roll. Yeah, that's what I set to do, man.
Yeah,
rock and roll.
Yeah.
Shut up and take my money.
Well, that's awesome. So when it comes to your writing, who are your biggest influences?
Robert Heinlein. I'm a big Heinlein fan. All of my inspirations are rooted in sci-fi. Ray Bradbury, for example. But the book Starship Troopers, and I had read that before I saw the film, which is nothing like the book.
No.
But I have an appreciation for both. That's when I started to read Stranger in a Strange Land.
Oh, wow.
And things like that. But definitely Heinlein all the way. Shirley Jackson. Big fan of The Lottery, Haunting of Hill House, of course, and Mary Shelley. So more of your gothic when it comes to the female writers, and then more ahead of their time sci-fi prophets, if you will, for science fiction.
All right. But besides the folks who you've worked with, obviously you have a high respect for these artists. Who are your favorite artists, and who do you feel like you would love to see do sequential art for your stories in the future?
Greg Ticini.
Okay.
And he illustrates Low, if you're unfamiliar.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I see the title, so the name.
He's my absolute favorite. I've tried to send him emails, no response, but I'm gonna keep trying. And if he's at a con, I'm definitely coming up to the table, and we're gonna talk, because I absolutely love his work. The way he draws the human form, just angular and delicate, and the colors, it's just, the way he suggests motion is even beautiful in the backgrounds. It's just like, it looks like a brushstroke. It looks so intricate and yet effortless, and I love that nobody does it like Ticini.
I'm gonna have to check this out, Troy. Will you
know,
point that out to me tomorrow?
I will. I could have sworn that you had seen Low way back. I mean, because that's an Image book. It's been
Listen,
running for a while.
Troy. I've had a life, so I've been Low. I've seen Low. I've lived there, but things are on the up, I think, maybe.
So I'm a little curious. You know, I'm going to give you a quick lightning round. We're coming close to the end, and I don't want to keep you all night here.
Oh, at the end, by the way, I have 5 questions at the end.
All right, so I'm gonna go with 3. All right, so in the lightning round here, if they're you know what? Name your 3 favorite bands. What kind of music do you listen to?
Number 1, Talking Heads. Let's see. Number 2. Golly, that it always changes with the wind, man. Listen, I'm a big fan of new wave, so I'm gonna go ahead and say I really dig the Smiths. Number 3 would have to be, Kasey. I'll give it up for Depeche Mode.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
I like all of those things. I would recommend, if you have not, give a listen to the work of Gary Newman.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's number 4.
Beyond the Pleasure Principle, you know, for Cars, because everybody knows that one. I've actually been, and he's still making albums. He tours.
Yeah.
You know, he's just
he married the president of his fan club.
Yes, and that's been a stable relationship. And you know, it's funny. He is one of those celebrities that I would absolutely love to meet and have dinner with. I've followed his career, you know, like 1980 to now. You know, buying his music and listening and reading interviews and reading about him and, you know, his personal struggles and how he surmounted them. I'm like, wow. That is inspirational. Susie Sue of Susie and the Banshees. That would be another one for me. But
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm like you. I'm huge new wave. 1980s is like, you know, the musical height.
Yeah, both of us appreciate those. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So
very good.
So my number 2. You know, we've gone to music now. So number 2. If you had a favorite food. Like your go-to, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat.
I'm
Comfort
listening.
Food? Beef stew and cornbread.
Wow. Beef stew and cornbread.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I still make it. My mom used to make it. And the funny part is that I thought it was this secret family recipe that she had for years, so we would always have it all the time, and I absolutely loved it. So when I moved out, I was like, Mom, you got to give me that recipe. She goes, it's Mrs. Grass.
Well,
like you just ruined my entire life, Mom.
So what? So when you come visit us here in Virginia, I will treat you to dinner, and I will make sure that you get some good Southern cornbread, so you could see what cornbread is like here in the South. Virginia is not the dirty South, but it is the South.
Barely. Not where we live, but you get down here to Fredericksburg, and yes, it's the South here in Fredericksburg. And
so, oh, look at that.
What?
Yep, dick down a painting. That's all right.
So, and lastly, if there was one thing that the listening audience needs to know about Kasey Pierce, one thing that you want to share with us about yourself that you feel safe sharing, what would that thing be?
And
this is for posterity, so be honest.
All right. So go ahead and envy me. I'm Comics MVP. So I ain't going nowhere so you can get to know me. That was me being Detroit. That was a 50-cent line.
Nice.
So there you go.
So, okay, my final things here. So at the end of each year, and we're about to go, here we only got a couple more weeks in the year for podcasting, but one of our very final shows for the year, we always do, and this is going to be our 10th one or something like that. This is season 20, and yet somehow we've only done 12 seasons. It's confusing. But we do our best of the year. And so I would like to know, in 5 categories, what are your best of 2019? And those are comics, television, video games, movies, and events. And, events like conventions and that sort of thing.
Dude, you were talking to one of the most disconnected people on the planet.
That's all right, and and a lot of people will say stuff like that, and your answers, even though you might be off in some other land, are going to be just as good as the people like me and like Troy who try to devour everything.
Kevin devours more than I do.
So if we're talking 2019, I gotta give it up. I actually think the copyright is 2018, but excuse me, sorry. Stop it. I am going to go with the Source Point title, and I'm going to go with The Misplaced. And The Misplaced is it's a hardcover. It's a one-shot. Sorry about that. It's it's about a husband and wife who get shipwrecked, and he loses her in the afterlife, so he's on a quest to find her. So it's kind of like Dante's Inferno, but in reverse. And it is what I would call romanticized steampunk art. It's not exactly painted, but it's not exactly digital either. It is called The Misplaced, and you can actually, the individual issues are soliciting right now in Diamond, but we did release it as a hardcover, and that is by Chris Callahan, written and illustrated. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of my favorite books on the table. If we were talking film, let's talk Joker.
Okay.
And Joker, sorry. It's funny. I'm so glad that I went and saw Joker after the hoopla, after hearing both sides about it being hyper violent, which I've seen way worse, and the message. And I remember when the film was over, the first thing I said was, it is very pretentious for an audience member to think that a film owes them a message either way, positive or negative. Because throughout the film, they're playing the song, That's Life. There is no message. This is the origin of the Joker. And yeah, it was pretty much comic book version Taxi Driver. And, mental health is a real thing in this country. And, the way we treated mental health back then was pretty accurate. Now we're a lot more aware. That's life. That's how it goes. And I really enjoyed the Joker, and I think Joaquin deserves the Oscar, and I hope he gets it. If not, you know what? The Oscars really don't mean much to me. It's just a group of people saying, hey, I like this. But if he wins, good for him. Let's see, video games. Gosh. So the new Zelda is pretty awesome. And that's for the Switch. And we play a lot of Mortal Kombat in this house.
Oh my God, I love you so much.
We've been playing Mortal Kombat 11, which I believe came out 2 years ago. And because first-person shooters actually do make me nauseous to play, so fighting games is where it's at for me, or third person. but definitely Mortal Kombat 11. I know that's not a 2019 title. Also, we've got the new Wolfenstein. That was pretty dope too, which had a really weird story behind it. If you ever play the latest Wolfenstein, the story is just so out of this world that I'm like, man, they need to make a movie out of this, so people can complain about how shitty it is. But it's absolutely gnarly. It's got Nazis. It's got people with disembodied heads being put on other bodies. You're in outer space. It's wild, and I love it just for the storyline. Okay, so that's television. Gosh, we just finished a series. Ooh, Mindhunter. Mindhunter is. Have you seen it?
Mindhunter?
Yeah, dude, Netflix.
Okay,
so Mindhunter.
check it out.
Oh, you will love it. So
Okay.
There's 2 seasons so far. We're waiting on the 3rd one in the spring. It's based on 2 real life people. It's the FBI when they were establishing the behavioral sciences division, and they were interviewing serial killers to get inside the mind of a serial killer to prevent more serial killing. So this is back in the 70s. And so the interviews are real.
Oh, wow. And
Some of it dramatized, the names have been changed, but it's real solid, it's real good.
Who were the main the main actors in this?
I'm so bad with names.
That's fair enough. I feel like I've seen it. I feel like I
But
put
I
it on
know
my
the
list.
one guy, he looks exactly like Daniel Tosh, which makes me crack up. And he's actually a Broadway actor, and he's a voice in the new Frozen movie. But he does look just like Daniel Tosh to me. And gosh, I mean, I like it too because there's not a lot of star power. Sometimes that can really drown out a title because that's what you're centered on. But just like, for instance, the reboot of Dawn of the Dead, I think was very successful because it didn't have a lot of star power at the time. I mean, the biggest star in that was Ving Rhames.
Right.
Because it didn't round out. We were so story and action centered. So yeah, definitely check it out. Mindhunter 3rd season, I believe, is in the spring, and it's hard for me to sit down and watch something long and heavy. But we marathoned that. It was great.
So Jonathan Groff or Alan Tudyk?
Yeah.
One of those guys looks like Tosh
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
All right, and then events. What's been your favorite convention from this year? Or it doesn't have to be a convention; it can be some other event.
Let's see here. We here in Michigan, we always say we love Cherry Capital Comic-Con. I love Baltimore Comic-Con as well. Cherry Capital is in Traverse City, and it is at a resort during Memorial Weekend, and it's a chance for all of our con family to hang out and catch up. Baltimore, of course, was very gracious to give me a table this year. They're excellent. Boston did the same as well. This is my 2nd time being a guest at Boston. So the East Coast has been where it's at for me. New York, obviously, we always do so well. So I think between those 3, I mean, the East Coast events are where it's at. And like I said, I'm very blessed and fortunate to have been asked to be a guest. So, and of course, Baltimore's my favorite because I got to meet Troy David.
Well, there you go. That'll do it every time.
So that's my answer.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us today, Kasey. Is there anything else we haven't covered before we let you go?
My upcoming project is going to be huge. It's going to be very big. It's going to be a very big deal. And it is a paranormal space opera about Alzheimer's. And it's a larger book. And I've been talking to some cats about licensing it. But my mother has Alzheimer's. And so I set out to shine the light on not only people with Alzheimer's, but the caretakers and what they go through, and have a real honest conversation with the world that this is not just something that old people get or something that happens when you're old. Anybody can get this. There is preventative measures that you can take. And it's become something that we don't talk about in polite society. But I think that people that care for people with Alzheimer's feel like they're really alone because nobody talks about it. So this story, it's got a lot of B-movie elements. It's a space adventure. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's rooted in a very sad thing. But I'm really, really excited about it. It's called The Other People Who Live Here.
And this is a novel.
It's going to be a graphic novel.
A graphic novel. Oh, okay. And what size, what page count are you looking at?
140.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, I'm literally taking notes.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, good. Very good.
We're going to make sure you get all these for me too, Troy.
You're not a retailer.
Order them for me is what I'm saying.
Of course I will, Kevin.
All
right. You will undoubtedly be, getting little messages from me, hey, what's going on? How are things? And I want to put up a little post on the Facebook page. I want to let our flashback readers know.
Very good.
So
we're no Cosmic Kasey, but we do like to service the indie folks, and make sure that they get the coverage that they deserve.
And also,
I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate all the indie folks too. Like I said, without you guys, there's no us. So thank you for taking a chance.
And some cat pictures also. If you just want to share your cat pictures.
Oh yes, absolutely. Your baby's so cute.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my girls. I brought home a blanket from the dry cleaner just yesterday. It was all wrapped up in its plastic. Put it on the bed and went to do other things. Came back, turned around, looked, and there's the gray cat on top of this mountain of floofy blanket in a plastic bag. Just,
Oh, yeah. Because you set up the throne. She's Queen of Sheba.
Yeah. The queen of all plush things.
Yep, they dominate, I'm telling you.
So, Kevin is not the cat person that I am.
Oh, and put Kira down for her upcoming items as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, no, and Zoe.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we've got more people ordering your stuff right now already.
Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, anything else we need to cover before we go?
I don't believe so.
All right. One more thing. When is the next time your fans can see you?
Oh, you can see me. I believe my first show is in February, which is Great Lakes Comic Con, which I believe is February 21st. And you can follow me. I'm always updating my Instagram, especially, which is at KCD Writes, not as in women's lib, but as in physical writing. Facebook.com/Cosmic Kasey, and Twitter handle is the same, Cosmic Kasey. And I keep everybody updated on The Other People Who Live Here, the Norah film that's going into production pretty soon. We did get film options, so I'm super excited about that. And I just keep everybody updated about where I'm going to be at. Now, my new website launches January 5th, so look out for that as well.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to that, and of course, we'll be sharing out your posts as you have things come out.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love this show. This is excellent. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for being here, for doing this with us. For answering me back and not just blocking me.
I knew you were legit.
Well, we'll have you back on once you have your next big deal. We'll have you back on to talk about that as well. But I think that's the show for this week. So for Kasey Pierce and for Troy David Phillips, EK the DJ here at FXBG Public Radio in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and for everything geek pop culture, I'm Kevin Goswan, and this is Comics Online.
Hold the cat up one more time.
Oh,
Swag.
I think he's pissed.
Swag. Swag. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times. Swag 1,000 times.
Disclaimer.
Swag.
The opinions expressed in this podcast may not represent those of Comics Online, any participants, or any employers past, present, or future. If you would have thought otherwise without hearing this disclaimer, maybe you're not ready for this whole internet thing, much less comic book writers. Or maybe you're instead one of our smart and sexy fans who appreciate foul language, talking to authors, biting sarcasm, and everything geek pop culture. If you have comments or questions for the Comics Online podcasters, post on our Facebook page, tweet us on Twitter, or email us at podcast@comicsonline.com. All original material in this podcast copyright Comics Online.